So, first question was, what do I do if my blood glucose, my blood sugar stays mostly above the 90? Or I've included here, so US, we're using milligrams per deciliter. For those internationally in Europe, Australia, you're using millimoles. So we've got the 90 and the 5. Remember, it's a factor of 18 and outside those meal times. So what if it stays high? What if it's not going into that zone that I want to get leaner, use my own sources of fuel? Well, first, I recommend recording regularly so you have a lot of data. And that's just not recording about what happened with the blood sugar, but it's recording the meals, it's recording the stress, it's recording the sleep. All those factors play a role in your blood sugar. And so if you can get an understanding, oh, this is working and this is my formula, and I often talk about this, finding your own formula is critical because we're all a little bit different. But I'll give some general rules. Number one, protein makes you full, satisfied, and is the most important factor for lowering your blood glucose. So start with there. Have a look at the portion of protein, prioritize it. Don't have meals without protein. Okay. Number two, look at stress. Remember, cortisol's job is to raise your blood sugar. So if you're doing what you think is the right thing food-wise, then look at the stress and see how you can manage it. I've had some posts in the Facebook about a breathing exercise. Today I talked about in terms of sleep. Look at the mindset, how you're reacting to situations and people, and do the best you can to try to reduce and stabilize that blood sugar, being in that state of peace as much as possible, as I talk about. You could also, as I explained in the hunger training video webinar just previously, you could extend the fasting window. So you could move and say, all right, well, I've checked my blood sugar, it's at 90. What if I wait 1 hour? Does it go down to 85? What if I waited 2 hours? Watch out for extending it too far. If it's not going down, there's clearly something like cortisol causing a problem. But if you see it coming down and you say, okay, well, I'm just going to extend the window. I'm going to do some of the strategies like drinking water, reading a book, distracting myself, moving, any of those things, and see if it comes down. Third is slow the rate that those carbohydrates convert to sugar and spike the blood sugar. So it's adding fiber. And for my mind, looking after that microbiome, there's a reason why I started with elimination diet and microbiome in the webinars, because they are fundamental for balancing blood sugar. You could go for a walk post-meal, see if how that works for you. You could meditate, you could relax, you could do any of those activities. Other thing I posted this week was about magnesium. Most people are deficient in magnesium. We just don't get enough in our diet, particularly women over 40. They're very deficient. And magnesium is a gatekeeper for calcium in terms of osteoporosis. So it's not such a calcium issue, it's a magnesium issue. So please, everybody, ensure you get enough magnesium. I think supplementing regularly is the safeguard. I like the magnesium glycinates. There's a few different versions. Have a look at the post. But you could also, not only magnesium, I'm going to do a later post on berberine. You could also try berberine, which was related to one of the classic blood sugar pharmaceuticals that we used to use a lot of, called metformin, especially before the other one. So I find metformin, out of most of the pharmaceuticals related to blood sugar, as one of the safest. But berberine has some similarities. So that's number one. To move it down, try those 7 and look at those 7 strategies, tips. Let's move to question number 2. My blood glucose stays mostly in the ranges from 70 to 140. So it's basically, it's what the person's saying is it's jumping around a lot. What do I do if it jumps around a lot? Well, number one, check the machine. I just had in the last week a client who presented me the machine, and then I checked it against mine, which I know is very accurate, and it was way out. So she had blood sugar levels were on the higher side, suggesting, oh, okay, this is a cortisol, when in fact the cortisol issue, the blood sugar was at a stable level. So just be careful about those cheap machines sometimes. can cause an issue. And sometimes even the CGM, those constant glucose meters, can also be out and need to be replaced. But if it's real, and I have seen this where a person's blood sugar is jumping, they're making big shifts, and it's not good for the body to be really jumping consistently that high. And what that does is put stresses on the hormone cortisol. That's job is to stabilize the bottom, and insulin, the hormone responsible for stabilizing the top, it puts a lot of stress in this yo-yo action. And what happens is moods. And I always say, if you've got kids, you've seen this in action where they go, you send them to a birthday party, they come home full of sugar, they're bouncing off the walls, and then they're crashing. This is not good for the body. We want stable blood sugar. So you want to measure more frequently, look at the 30-minute, 60-minute, 90-minute marks, see what's going on there. And you want to often, if the meals are really high carbohydrate or issues, you want to stabilize that. But for some people, if you feel the meal was pretty balanced, then maybe you need to eat more often and smaller meals. We see that a lot with children. That's why they often need those 5 meals a day, 3 big meals and 2 snacks, just to stabilize things, especially if they're using a lot of fuel. So try that. But I just want to stress that big shifts constantly can put a stress on the body. So my blood glucose is consistently in the optimal range, but I'm not losing weight. First question is, how long have you given yourself? So what are your expectations? And then the second part is, and I'll talk about some guidelines. Actually, I'll talk now. So if a males and females, there is a difference because of hormones. If a man has lost over 500 grams in a week, great job. Of fat, great job. We usually, the 1 kilo, and it depends how much. If a person has 20, 30 kilos to lose, they're going to lose more than the person who only has 5 kilos to lose. So, but there is a limit to that amount. And we generally say I've seen 1.5 kilos before, but often that can come at a cost. So we want steady weight loss. Now, fat loss, I should say. In terms of females, generally the 200 gram to 500 gram in a week is the range. So think of that tub of butter. That butter weighing about 200 to 250 grams, losing one of those in a week, I think is a great job. But if a person's not losing any weight on the scale, what I would say is check your waist measurement. Check a body composition, because maybe what's happening is, in terms of, there might be a body composition shift. If you're gaining muscle but losing body fat, that can be a positive thing. Obviously, you're changing your body shape. So I've had plenty of people who scales stayed the same, but you see they have a new shape, a much more athletic looking shape. But what if there's no fat loss? If there's no fat loss, or there's no weight loss, and then some people, we have this skinny fat tendency, especially if cortisol is high, you can be gaining body fat and losing muscle. So you're not improving your body composition there. So we just have to watch out in terms of, the point here is, what is going on in terms of body composition, and also give it some time too. We should be looking over the month. That's why I'm doing this for a month, not just a weekly update. If you have scales, my feeling is throw them out. They're not supportive for most people. They mess with the emotions. So please, I'd rather people get rid of them. If you want to check, okay, I'd love just to be clothing. If you don't have at your gym, you don't have a good body composition measurement, most of the cheap ones that you can buy aren't so good. But what I would recommend is use a normal waist measurement, like a tape, to measure your waist. So blood glucose is often like right on the bottom end, and I've seen this. So say it's 65 to 75, even up to 80, but I'm just not hungry. There's a physiological and a psychological component to hunger, to appetite. So I've seen, especially those with eating disorders, no hunger, just not hungry. Don't feel like anything. Blood sugar super low. This just shows the power of the mindset overriding some of the physiology. And that can be an issue. So what you want to look at instead from a physiological perspective, point number 3, is look for fatigue, brain fog, anxiety, shakiness, irritability. If you have a look at the video that I made on hunger training, you'll see there are 2 elements to blood sugar. It could be, I'm hungry, but some people override that. So then we're looking for more the fatigue-based ones. And so using those as a guide. But there are hormones that regulate your hunger, your appetite, leptin and ghrelin. And if you've got adrenals, and thyroid, they can throw out these other hunger hormones, satiety hormones, and cause a problem there. Could also, in a healthy state, I don't like it going too far though. Like below the 70, I'm like, you have to eat. But if you were consistently, say, 75, 80, and you're like, I'm just not hungry, could be a sign that you're in strong ketosis because you've reduced the carbohydrates a lot. And that's one of the feelings of satiety, where the body, with all that protein, a lot of people eat a lot of protein and they're like, oh my God, I can't eat anything more. I'm so full. That can be a sign, but I don't like it going below 70. That can cause a problem for cortisol. So if you're feeling shaky, even when glucose is normal, the question is, what was it prior? So that we have this term called reactive hypoglycemia. This really affects those type 1 diabetics who inject insulin. They will, and this is why they need to often have a source of sugar around. If they have seen their blood sugar, it's 140, they inject some insulin and it suddenly goes right down. Then it's like, whoa, that's the power of insulin. They'll need to bring it up a little bit. It's too much of a stress on the body. So if you're finding that similar tendency and you start feeling shaky, sweats, like you're feeling really anxious, you have to be careful of that. Have to look, okay, what was that meal? Why did that meal push it so high? I want to stabilize the meal more protein, fat, fiber. And then you also want to look at your exercise, if you're doing good exercise, to make insulin more sensitive and make it perform better. And obviously looking at the relationship with cortisol too. So we don't want big drops, like I said, where we have these kids come home from a birthday party sort of reactions. It's not healthy for the body and for the mind also, as any of the parents will attest to, as I have. What about if my blood glucose is around or right on the top end? And you might even have a score of 110 after you wake up and you're like, oh my God, I've got prediabetes. It can be pretty normal. I've experienced that myself. I sometimes get out of bed and like, let's go. Morning glucose being higher than expected is called the dawn phenomenon in a healthy person. Remember, cortisol's job is to raise your blood sugar, and it rises in the morning. It basically says to the liver, the glycogen, okay, let's release it, let's reduce it and put this glucose into the bloodstream to rise it up, to get this person out of bed to go for it. It can pump too hard. So the antidote to this is actually what I tell a lot of people who do fasting in the morning: please eat a meal of protein and fat, okay? You have some fiber, have a little bit of carbohydrates, maybe in some fruit or something like that, but stabilize it, give your body something so cortisol can back off. What about training? What are the effects of training? Especially if someone said here, my blood sugar glucose is over 100. I had a client, hers was 160 after Zumba, like an hour after Zumba. I'm like, it's not a good idea. That low intensity, long duration, it was 2 hours of Zumba, was not good for her. Her cortisol was, her adrenal function was really, she was massive in fatigue. So what I recommended was slow weight training, stabilize it, lots of walking. But exercise in a healthy person also will raise your blood sugar. It's just we want it coming down within an hour, ideally even half an hour. It should have stabilized. So if it's staying, if it's past that hour, you want to look at it that it may be stressing the body. And so just see if you can adjust that. Look at more rest, recovery sort of activities. Don't push it so hard, more walking. slow weight training. Okay, my blood glucose goes very high, then low overnight. Now, this is for those with the constant glucose meter, generally not those waking up. I don't recommend wake up to test your blood sugar. Maybe if you go to the toilet, but the problem is if you go to the toilet, then you test your blood sugar, you're really wired then, so ideally don't do it. But for those who have the constant glucose meter, they wake up in the morning, they look at the chart and go, ooh, I've seen this many times. Wow, my blood sugar was really low. It might have started really high, went really low. Unless it's an error, it could be because of the meal prior. It could be because of alcohol. It could be because of the sleep fluctuations, so hormones playing their role. We have to remember that the body holds a healthy body holds in a fasted state about a teaspoon of sugar. That's how those measurements are evaluated. I wanted it back to a teaspoon after eating as soon as possible in that 85 sort of zone. But what can happen is the hormones they're going to be working harder for some people. So adjust your evening routine, adjust your dinner, try different dinners, look at the ratios. Again, all the things we talk about, adequate protein, put some good fats in there, put some fiber in there, watch out for alcohol, look at how you can get into a relaxing, reduced cortisol.